Ashley, this seems to represent the first chapter where and I was part of the planning for the bird flu. I know what it's like inside the federal government to prepare for the possibility of a global pandemic. And just to make sure our viewers aren't more scared than they need to be, that has not been declared. The concern is that we're on the brink of one. But the president seeming to say, we got this, and his economic team saying, it's all fine. That's not matching up with the messages coming from the world's health leaders.
That's exactly right. Not just from the global health leaders, but from the CDC that basically warned today that it's not a question of if, but when the coronavirus comes to the United States. So what you're seeing is this very disconcerting split screen where you have the president and some of his top advisors saying, it's all under control, nothing to see here. And then another set of people also affiliated with the administration saying, we need to be prepared. We potentially need to be alarmed. It's not necessarily all under control. We're working to get it under control. And there's been some very good reporting in the Post and elsewhere of things that have already gone wrong, from tests that have been faulty to testing not being as widespread in the United States as some people would like to see, to the president himself being furious about some passengers who were quarantined on that Japanese cruise ship flying back with healthy Americans. And so it's not the sort of perfectly streamlined machine that the president wants everyone to believe. I'm not saying people should be deeply alarmed and panicked yet, but I think the problem is that there is a disassociation between what we're hearing from the president at the top and then other people more acutely involved in the details of this process.
Ashley, I want to ask you to just talk to me about the intersection of something the Post has been covering in extraordinary detail, as has Axios and the New York Times, which is the president's obsession with a post-impeachment purge of national security officials, aided by hit lists coming from the wife of a Supreme Court justice and others. And some of this reporting, I'm going to read something from Foreign Policy magazine about all of the security officials who have been ousted. In May 2018, Trump ordered the NSC, that's the National Security Council's entire global health security unit shut down, calling for reassignment of Rear Admiral Timothy Zimmer and dissolution of his team within the agency. The month before, John Bolton pressured his counterpart, Tom Bossert, to resign, along with his entire team. Neither the NSC nor the Department of Homeland Security's epidemic teams have been replaced. The global health section of the CDC was so drastically cut in 2018 that much of its staff was laid off, and the number of countries it was working in was reduced from 49 to 10. Meanwhile, through 2018, the U.S. Agency for International Development and its director, Mark Green, came under fire from both the White House and the Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo. And although Congress has so far managed to block Trump administration plans to cut the U.S. Public Health Service Commission Corps by 40%, the disease-fighting cadres have steadily eroded as retiring officers go unreplaced. There is a documented effort on Donald Trump and Mike Pompeo and other officials' part to purge the federal government, to decapitate all the leaders of our public health agencies.
That's right. I think you do have to separate. There has been, as we wrote today, sort of a hollowing out of the scientific community in the Trump administration since he took office. I do think you need to separate that from this other purge we're seeing now post-impeachment, which is very much about installing loyalists, punishing people who testified against the president. But it doesn't change the facts on the ground that when there is now potentially this global pandemic, the president at some point will have to turn to these agencies that are not as robustly staffed as you would necessarily want them to be. That is just a reality. That's something he's grappling with, and it's just the facts on the ground. And I would just add one final point is, from the Bush administration, when there are actually these huge crises out of our control. A lot of what we cover in this White House is the president self-sabotaging crises of his own making. This is something out of his control. But if you remember President Bush with Hurricane Katrina and how tough it was for him to recover from bungling that response, that is a potential risk that President Trump faces now.
I will never forget that, Andrew Weissmann. I think the intersectionality, though, the response, the people that were responsible for foreign policy were the National Security Advisor and the Homeland Security Advisor, Condi Rice and Fran Townsend. They were in the room when we practiced for the bird flu outbreak. So my point is, by decimating the leaders of your security agencies every, 12 weeks, you're decimating any sort of muscle memory or institutional knowledge about how to deal with a global crisis.
So, one of the oddities that you have here with the president is he spends so much time denigrating all of these agencies, whether it's the intelligence community, but then when it comes time that you need to rely on them because he wants to go after an important ISIS leader, suddenly they're accurate and good. But here he's going to have the same issue after he's challenging all sorts of agencies and saying they're incompetent. The CDC is really going to need to step up, and he's going to be relying on them. And this is the agency and many other agencies that he says don't trust. And so the sort of lack of competence that you sort of is projected is something that I think everyone's going to be really seeing. Is he able to carry through? Because I don't think the sort of information management that he is good at sort of trying to accomplish is going to really work here when people want health management.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.